Congressman Paul Ryan from Wisconsin.
I'm happy to stay with this issue if you want to, actually.
Yeah, I mean, since Nancy Pelosi is speaking with her fellow Catholics, what is Paul Ryan Catholics' take on this?
Right, so as you know, you and I are both Catholics. This, to quote the president, is a teachable moment. And I would say it's not quite the lesson the president was hoping we would learn before the election. And it's a lesson of this is what happens when you apply the president's progressive philosophy of government. So you have Obamacare. And it is a philosophy that believes we now have government-granted rights, and that the government's job is to grant us our rights. And when those government-granted rights collide or conflict with our constitutional rights, well, such is the sacrifice needed in the name of progress. And so you have this new government-granted right, health care, in collision with our First Amendment right of religious freedom. And guess what is winning? It kind of surprises me that they're shocked at this backlash, because the president himself spoke to Catholic leaders. The administration spoke to Catholic leaders about this. I remember having long talks with Bart Stupak and other Catholic Democrats back when they were passing this bill.
Heartbreaking.
About this very issue.
Well, we knew this was going to happen.
So we were telling them they're going to rope-a-dope you. You know, this is going to happen. And what happened is they did do this. And so the teachable moment here is when we elect a president who brings this progressive philosophy to bear to government, they decide how our rights are to be granted and given and organized, and if they clash with our First Amendment right of religious freedom or something else, then we know who wins in that exchange. And so to me, this is much, much bigger than about, contraception or something like that. This is about religious freedom, First Amendment rights, and how this progressive philosophy of fungible rights, of living, breathing Constitution, really clashes and collides with these core rights that we built our society and country around.
But isn't this an issue that goes way beyond Catholic institutions? It's been, I think, incorrectly couched as a Catholic issue. This is an issue of conscience for all people. I'm a small business owner, so my insurance will have to be mandating that I offer this coverage. And as a Roman Catholic, I find that abhorrent. And I think there are a lot of other small business owners who don't want to be forced to do this. And so I think any compromise should not just focus on Catholic institutions.
That's right.
And that the bishop should not even go there. It should it should be a broad-based statement. No, we cannot be forced against our conscience, against our faith, but against our conscience to provide these services.
That's precisely the point I'm trying to make, which is that's what the teachable moment is. This isn't a teachable moment just for Catholics who got duped. This is a teachable moment for Americans who see that their constitutional rights could be next, that they're being abridged in this instance. And so this goes beyond one church. This goes beyond one issue, and this goes into the progressive thinking that is behind these kinds of laws like Obamacare and their implementation. They've slow-walked a lot of the regs in Obamacare as much as they could before the election. This one moved and got out there. This just gives you a sense of what's to come if this keeps continuing.
Oh, end-of-life procedures are next, are they not?
Well, if you look at IPAB, that's the Independent Payment Advisory Board. It's being assembled this year. It's 15 bureaucrats that the president appoints, and their job is to put price controls and edicts onto Medicare to tell Medicare providers, how much they're going to get reimbursed for what procedure, if, where, when, and how. And that, to me, simply leads to rationing. That, to me, is not having a patient-doctor relationship-driven medical system. It is a top-down bureaucratic edict, and what's more insidious about this IPAB is their reforms or their dictates can go right into law without Congress really doing anything about it. And that, to me, is, again, just another example of this kind of governing philosophy which takes control of our country away from we the people and gives it to sort of a bureaucratic elite.
And Congressman Ryan, as one of the leading lights today in the conservative movement, and so many people respect your viewpoint, given what we're seeing now with Obamacare and its implementation and the cram down of these edicts on the people, would you not advise Governor Romney to say, look, looking at this and seeing what's happened, even if I didn't personally favor the same types of things happening in Massachusetts, this was a mistake? Would you advise him to say that at this point?
Well, I've always sort of said that. I never thought that was a good law to begin with. I'm not in the business of giving these candidates their political strategy advice, only that he needs to be really forceful and committed to abolishing Obamacare, not because it's the right thing to do to win a primary, but because it's the right thing to do to reassert our constitutional rights. It's a matter of philosophy, not policy. And I just want to make sure that he's strong on communicating and understanding this philosophy, because if you get the bedrock of foundational principles right, then you're going to have good policies.
But is the federalism defense enough? Is the federalism defense enough that he offers to Rick Santorum and others on this issue?
He did what he did, and I don't think he wants to walk away from that. I don't think he's interested in looking like, I guess you call it a flip-flopper. I'll let him decide how he makes his explanations. I don't think mandates are A, constitutional, B, good policy. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, we're talking to Congressman Paul Ryan. Now, I'm looking at the deficit numbers for the last 4 years.
Right.
And $1 trillion plus for the last 4 years in Washington, D.C. The president's approval rating somehow is up, and congressional approval rating is down to 10%. Why is this the dynamic that we're seeing out there among the public, who apparently is blaming Congress more than the president for this?
The way I look at this is the first half of last year, when our approval ratings were much higher, we were setting the agenda. We were putting our budget out in alternatives. Second half of the year, we got sort of embroiled within negotiations with the administration, which never amounted to anything, and muddled the differences. We have to go back and recast and reclarify those differences. That's what I'm going to be talking about at CPAC tonight, which is we've got to give the country very bold alternatives based on our founding principles that we're proud to assert and reapply, so we can give the country a really clear choice. We need to sharpen the contrast, not dull the contrasts. And I think part of the reason why the popularity is so low is because of this muddling of differences. People look at what Harry Reid's doing in the Senate, which is nothing, no budgets for 3 years, and they just think we're all bad. And so we need to continue to separate ourselves from the absolute irresponsible and dysfunctioning United States Senate, which didn't budget in 2010, 2011, and now 2012, irrespective of the law, and show the country how we are different, give them specifics, and how we will do things differently if given the opportunity. The point I'm trying to make is it is not going to be enough for us to win an election by default, by simply running against the Obama economy or Obamacare. We need to give the country a very bold and clear agenda on how we would do things differently so we can win an affirming election. Because the window of opportunity to save America from a debt crisis, to get us back on a limited government, free enterprise, prosperous society, that window is starting to close. And so we have to win an election that gives us the moral authority and obligation to actually implement these constitutional principles and reforms in 2013 to save America.
And Congressman, this is why people are looking to you here for leadership. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Because we've had, whether it was Gingrich or Santorum or Romney, they've been oftentimes sniping at each other, tearing down each other, rather than making the case to the American people affirmatively for why their nomination would be great for America. Why following me is a great idea. Right. Give me 5 reasons why Rick Santorum should be the nominee. Give me 5 reasons why Mitt Romney's solution on the economy is a blockbuster winner. And I don't think the American people today really have that understanding about any of these candidates. I don't believe they feel it, and I'm sensing it from my listening audience, which is quite large, and I'm sensing it when I go across the country. What is it that you stand for beyond bumper stickers?
Well, and so what can we, members of the House of Representatives, do? Because we're in the majority. well, you know what? We can act. We're not going to pass laws because we have the Senate and Obama, but we can pass bills here to define ourselves, to show the country exactly what we would do, and then put these ideas out there. So we believe we have a big role to play in helping set this agenda, draw this contrast, and show the country how we will do things differently so that people have a legitimate choice. The way I look at this is we got to kick this thing upstairs, and upstairs in a conservative's mind is the American people, and let them choose this choice of two futures in front of them. It's not all about the nominee. It's about, the kind of Congress he's bringing in. It's about the conservative movement, which I would say is pretty well unified right now. Sure, there's sniping among candidates who are jockeying among themselves to get the nomination, but they're really, close on these issues. They're really subtle in the differences of opinion on issues. We're more unified than in many, many years in past. I mean, this is not Rockefeller Republicans versus Goldwater Republicans. We're all talking within the conservative side of the prism. And so I feel like we are going to get there. And what I want to do is make sure that we, meaning Congress, people running for Congress, the White House, people running our nominee, are going to the country with a very clear, bold agenda. And some people, the political handlers and the pollsters and the pundits will say, that's risky, don't do that. You can alienate people, you might lose some votes. No, we need to go with a very bold agenda, show the country, win, and then we can fix this thing.
Has Mitt Romney offered a bold agenda?
He actually, on entitlement policy, he's been pretty darn specific. He's been more specific than some of these other candidates. So when it comes to the big drivers of our debt, runaway spending, explosion of entitlement spending, he's been more specific than anybody else, to be honest with you.
How about his tax policy? Is that bold?
Well, he hasn't done as much on tax policy as, say, the other guys, but I think he has clearly agreed with what we're trying to do, which is tax reform, broaden the base, lower the rates, meaning get rid of loopholes, stop picking winners and losers in Washington through the tax code, and lower everybody's tax rate.
Well, he better make that
totally
case.
That philosophy.
Congressman...
Look, I'm neutral in this race. I haven't picked a candidate. I'm not
I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, when you have Rick Santorum winning by the margins he won by in three critical Midwest states, something isn't connecting for Romney and the core of the Republican Party. Something's not connecting. And if it's all this boldness out there, then somehow that needs to be translated better to the people.
But
because they're not hearing it.
The good news in this, and I like Rick a lot. I've known him a long time. The message is connecting, and that's what matters. So this message of bold reform is connecting, and so what we're finding is the person who is the best at doing that is connecting, and that person seems to rotate around, obviously. That's connecting. So that's my whole entire point today, is this message of bold reform works. It's not only the right thing to do, it's not only our moral obligation, it's also the politically smart thing to do, so let's do it. That's my point.